Welcome back to Fast Freddy RC, and today we're going to start step 1 of the Hornet build. Now before we do that, if the Hornet is your first ever Tamiya kit, or if you're a beginner in the world of RC and this is the first time building a car, there are just a few things that I want to show you before we get started that will make your life a little easier. 1. A lot of the screws in this kit are not Phillips head. They're called a JIS, which is Japanese Industry Standard. That is why I have the Tamiya toolkit here, because all of those are Japanese Industry Standard. And you'll find that if you use a regular Phillips head, it doesn't quite fit in the hole. The JIS, when you use the screwdriver in and you put it in the hole of the screw, you'll notice it's an absolute perfect fit. So I would suggest getting yourself a set of Tamiya tools for this, and I'll put a link in the description just so you have access to it. Now they are affiliate links. It does help the channel a little bit. You know, you get a little bit for it. So if you choose to buy it that way, I will earn a little bit of money from it, but it's not that much, and really it's going to be more helpful to you anyway to have those. And the same thing applies for these shock pliers. I find them very useful in multiple applications, not just for the shocks, but for other things that you end up building in the kit, which you'll see as we go along. The other thing, you're going to want a set of pliers. They're going to come in very handy. You're also going to want an X-Acto knife. It helps with cleaning up some of the things off the parts trees. And then of course there is this tool here, and again I'll put a link in the description. These are side cutters, and they're probably one of the best tools you could have for getting all of the parts off the parts tree. So I would suggest getting a set of those too, and I'll put a link down in the description as well. So those are the tools you're going to need in order to start building this kit. So let's open the instruction manual and let's move right into step 1, which you can see is attaching the rear shaft. And you can see that we are going to be starting to build the gearbox and all the different parts that we're going to need with this. Now you're going to see on the left hand side, step 1 shows you the parts you're going to want, and a lot of the screws and everything are going to be in these bags here. So we've got bag A, bag B, bag C, we've got bag D. We've also got these other bags where these ones have a lot of the gears that we need, as well as the grease. And then we've got another bag here which has all the metal parts, and your shocks and oil and that kind of thing. And you can see down there we've got our motor and bumper. So those are the items that come in the kit. However, I found something interesting with this kit which I've never seen before. BM. Now that is a separate bag, and for you to, just so you understand what these mean, if you see BB, that means bag B. That's bag D. Bag A. These are the things, the bags that you're gonna, or the numbering system they use that refer to the different bags. So these screws are obviously all in bag B. But here's what's really interesting. If you see BM, that means it is a bag on its own, and it has the plastic bushings and the metal bearing. I have searched everywhere and I cannot find these in the kit. They don't exist. And I thought, well, that's weird. So I went to the back, and this is worth knowing too, because at the very back it shows you the parts, and it shows you the different bags, and it shows you everything that you will find in bag A. These are the items that are in bag A, bag B, bag C, and D. But this BM, the metal bearing bag, I haven't been able to find it. Now I've never seen that in a Tamiya kit before, so I don't know what's gone on there, but it did not come with this. Now I do not care, because as I mentioned in the first video, I am replacing everything that is plastic and metal bushings with a full set of ball bearings. So even though that is missing, I was never going to use any of that anyway. So I have a full set of bearings, and that's what's going to be used to replace all of that. But a little odd, so you know, let's just hope that if for some reason you're not going to use the bearings, your kit came with that. Mine did not, so that's odd. So I'm just going to pull together all of the parts that we need, and then we'll start working on attaching that rear shaft. So when it comes to the parts tree, you can see with the side cutter, this makes the job really easy because we can actually make sure that the base of the side cutter sits nicely on the bottom of where you're planning on cutting, and you just snap. And then the same thing on this side. We're going to grab the side cutter, cut, and it's done. And the thing is, we can clean this up now, but it means that you're not damaging the part that you need because it's only cutting on one side, but you're making this so that you can get a pretty clean cut. And I mean, I can go through this, and I will, is that I can actually go here. You can see that, and I'm just going to trim it up a bit, make sure it's getting even cleaner, and you can also sand it down if you want to. But that makes it really, really nice. And we'll do the same thing with the other one. But the thing is, for the getting things off the parts tree, I used to use a X-Acto knife, which was fine, but this tool is going to make your job just that much easier. So highly recommend getting the side cutter for this. So we'll do the other one. Just going to do it taller, clean that up afterwards, and there we have it. Now I'm going to show you the parts before we get started, because there's another thing that you should know as you're getting started on this. So here are the two metal shafts that came out of our metal bag. And then here are all of the parts. So here's the bearings that I replaced the metal and plastic with, so I don't have to worry about that being missing out of the kit. But these are the two pieces we needed out of bag B, and these are the parts that we needed out of bag D. Now, as a beginner to Tamiya does this amazing thing where you don't really need to even know what the size of the screws are, because you can put the screw on top of the image and it should be a perfect match. So even if you don't understand, what screws what, if you put the screw on top of that image, if it matches front to back, you've got the correct screw. And the same thing with any of the other parts. They do a fantastic job to make this as simple as possible for you. So here we go. There are all of the pieces that we need for this step, along with our two gearbox halves, along with our metal shafts. So we can start putting this all together now. And of course, I've just realized the one other thing that we have to get is our gear, which is going to come out of this bag here. So I'll get all that together and we're going to start putting this together. So first off, it's showing you grabbing one of the metal shafts that we had and then grabbing one of these gears, because you can see that's going to fit onto there. So you can see that you want to slide that through, and then you can see that it's now flat. They're showing you there that you might have to push it on, but in actual fact it's going on very easily. So that is technically all you have to do with that, and it wants you to grease it up. That's fine, we're going to do that in a minute. What I want to first see is how the rest of it's going to go. So we're going to grab our gear box half, and you can see that there is a hole right there, and that metal shaft that we have is going to end up fitting right there. But you can also see that little symbol there is the grease. So this grease, which came with the kit, and I've popped it open, you can see that the grease is actually starting to spill out, which does happen, we need to grease that up. So I'll actually do that right now. Why not? Because we've got a bit of grease on here anyway that's kind of overflowed out of there. So I'll do that. But in actual fact, I am going to grease up some of this too, because there's excess. And there's excess on here, which I want to just get off of the tube of grease. And we're going to just move it around. I'm fairly liberal with the grease, because once the gearbox has been built, you don't really want to be taking it apart. So I just like to get enough on there. I also find this is a bit of a messy job, but I don't mind. So we'll just do that. And then we'll take our gearbox half and we'll stick that into there. So that part is done. Then you can see that this is, you need a bearing, and they're 1150 bearings, which are these bigger ones. We're going to pop in a bearing on this side. You can see, so there we go, there's one. And on this side, it's the 850 bearing. So that's the little guy, the BM1s. So we're going to put that in there. So the difference is if you didn't buy the bearing kit, that's going to be the metal bushing, and that will be the plastic bushing, which is just white. It's just a white plastic bushing. But again, highly suggest you get bearings, because it's going to make the car a lot quicker. It's going to make the car more efficient, and it's going to stop premature wear, because with it being a bearing, you're not wearing any of the gearing down or any of the plastic parts, because you've got nice movement inside, so it's not rubbing on anything. So definitely get a set of bearings. It's the best thing you can do, and I don't even consider it a hop-up. It really is something you should be doing when you build the kit initially. So you can see that there's the shaft that was greased, then there was the bearing, then there's the bushing, and again, that tube thing means we need to grease this up, and that's what we'll do. And you see how the gear is darker on the tops? That means they want you to grease it. So we'll do that. And I'm just going to slowly go along the gear, spinning it round. Get it all nice and greased up. And again, I'm going to do the same on this side. Grease it up. Just move it around. Get everything nicely greased up. So that's good. So now we can take that gear and put that on the shaft that we already put in. So there's our first gear in place. Now with this one, you can see that they actually wanted a bearing on this end and a bearing on the inside, and these again are those 1150s. So I'm just going to hold the gear in place just so it doesn't pop out, but we want one in there. So there's one bearing. And then on the other side, you can see how it's indented. So we're going to put that in there, and that one actually went in very easily. And then with this, you can see that the shaft is going through. Now there is a BD3, which is this one right here, which we got out of bag D, which they're telling you that they want on there as well. So that's going in there. So that's the bushing. Then we're going to slide that through to there. And that bushing is stopping this gear from basically colliding with the other gear. So that part is now in place, and it's out of the way of the other gear. And of course, we're going to grease this up too, which we didn't do earlier. There we go. So, I mean, essentially it can be like that. And I've put on a fair bit of grease, but I haven't totally overdone it, because you want to be careful you don't overuse it, because you will run out of grease. The other thing that we find is with the Tamiya kits, they don't often give you enough. I mean, that is a very small tube, and that's all you get with the kit. But I still like to be fairly liberal, but at the same time conservative. So I know it's a bit of a mix, but you'll figure it out as you go along. So that part there is complete. So now we're going to move on to the second half, which is putting together the other half of the gearbox. Okay, so for the other half, we need to put in our bearings. So once again, let's get those in. And actually, I'll use it this way. There we go. It's in there. It's nice and tight. And then we have the other side, same sort of thing. It's indented down there at the bottom, so we just need to put that in, and it goes in actually very, very easily. Now, I'm going to show you one other thing. So with this, again, we're doing the same thing. We're sliding that gear on, and it's popping on very easily. We don't need to do what they suggested, where you're kind of having to force it on, because it's loose enough that it's going on without any pressure at all. And then it shows you to grease it. Now you'll notice in the first one I didn't grease it, and I won't be doing it again either. And the reason I'm not doing it is because I've replaced the plastic and metal bushings with the ball bearings. I don't tend to grease things up when it's not necessary, because now this shaft is running around in the ball bearings, not the plastic bushings. So it's going to be nice and smooth anyway, so it doesn't need the grease. Now, you may decide you want to do it anyway, but I won't do it when I've got the bearings. I just don't see the point, and I've found that no point in gumming up things when it's not needed. So, in that case, we are now going to slide that through. And there we go. And this runs really smooth because we've got the ball bearings in there. So we're going to have to grease that up for sure. But there's one other piece that's on here, which is this, which you're going to find off of the parts tree. And you see how it says oil? It goes onto the outside of here. And you can see there's a hole that attaches to the underside of that, and then a screw that you screw into the plastic. Now, I think for the most part what that really is for is just that after this has all been built, you don't want to take the gearbox off to grease anything up. You can loosen off the screw, and then this will open up, and it'll allow you to put more grease on the inside the gearbox. You don't see that very often, but there are quite a few kits, I guess, that do have something like that, so that it allows you to have access after the fact. So we're just going to screw that on, and of course, if you remember, we have that tapping screw, and we're going to put that in there, and then use our screwdriver. So again, with the JIS screwdrivers, this is just going to start screwing in. And because it's a tapping one, you know it's just going to keep going in. But what I want to make sure of is, you can see for now, there's a lot of room, but we just want to keep screwing this in. But as we get closer, we're going to want to make sure that that thing is on that little bump to keep it in place. Just so that make sure it's in the right, yeah, and you see now it's actually attached itself, so everything's good. So now it is sealed, but it's in place. All we have to do is loosen that off, and then we'll be able to open this up if we wanted to add grease or oil at a later date. So that part is done, and you can see here that we're going to need to grease this up as well. So we'll go ahead and do that. But first off, I think what we'll do is I want to show you building the differential. So if we grab the gear here, we also have these 3 nylon bevel gears. And in order to put them into here, because you can see one side doesn't have any holes, this side does. That's because that's for these little bars that we picked out earlier. So what you can do, and I'll show you this, is that they want you to grease each of the metal bars up, which we'll do. And then we take a bevel and make sure that the bevel gear is facing inward. And then you can see that on here, it's going to sit inside of the gear, just like that. So again, we'll grab one of the metal shafts. We're going to grease it up. Put that on. And then put that in the gear. There we go. And then last one. Bit of a messy job. Same again. Put that through the hole. And then it's going to sit inside that last one. So as you can see, there are our little bevel gears inside of there. Now it's showing you they want you to grease it up. Well, the easiest way to do that I've found is wait until you've put it into that bigger gear, and then you can just squeeze the grease and spin the gear while it's on. And same thing on this side. And for the last one. And there we go. So there is our differential gear. And of course, these pieces here, which we've put in on both sides, are going to go on either side. So it's technically going to get greased up simply by this being put on to the end of it. But that's for the next step. So that part we'll just put off to the side for now, because that is done. Now we've already done that. We've now done the differential, so technically step 1 is fully complete. What we're left doing is moving on to step 2, and now we're going to put the two halves together and put the differential in the middle, and then use the screws to connect it all together. And then our gearbox is done. So let's move on to step 2.